Hi everybody, Mr. Farmer here, and welcome to AP Macroeconomics. We're going to be talking about income, saving, and spending. This is going to be 8.1. So some takeaways, we're going to talk about just the definitions of consumption and saving as economists use it, along with the consumption and saving schedule. Also, why would consumption and saving change if not for income? We'll call non-income determinants. Then we're going to finish with APC, APS, average propensity meaning likeliness to save or consume, and then marginal propensity to save and marginal propensity to consume, MPS and MPC. So by definition, just really quickly, personal savings is money that is not spent, which is a super helpful definition. It's a part of disposable income, and again, disposable income is once you've paid your taxes, whatever's left is disposable. Part of disposable income that is not consumed. Whereas savings is part of disposable income that is not spent. So you get this equation, disposable income minus consumption equals savings. So we have a schedule called consumption schedule, and you can identify savings schedule, although there is a different one that you can use that's specific to savings. So this is really kind of to acknowledge certain things. So for instance, we have this 45-degree curve, and we call that's going to be for disposable income. So it's always 45 degrees no matter what. And then we have this curve, which is going to be a little bit flatter on here. And so again, this 45 degree is going to be our disposable income, and then this is our actual consumption curve on here. Now again, we can identify our savings because disposable income equals savings plus consumption, and we can kind of mix this around. So disposable income minus consumption then equals savings. So when my consumption right here is larger than my actual income, I have what's called dis-saving or negative savings. And then as I go along, now my income is greater than my consumption. So here, this would be the value of savings. So we don't really need a savings schedule because we can identify this already. One thing to note is there is a breaking point, which at this point is going to be 1,000. And that's going to be our break even. And so we're going to be looking at this when we look at the APC and APS. So for consumption savings schedule, again, it's a graph from the previous slide. Things to note, as disposable income increases as you went along the x-axis, so does the level of consumption. You spent more money. And then vice versa, as disposable income decreases, you would spend a lower amount of money. That just makes sense. If you have less money, you spend less. If you have more, you spend more. As disposable income decreases, a larger proportion is spent on consumption. If we went back, we noticed that there's a breaking point where we spent 100% of our income on consumption. If we had any less than that, then over 100% of our money was spent on consumption, 110, 120%, hence the dis-saving. As our income increased, we had actual savings, meaning our consumption was less than 100%. And so we can see that here. At first, at year one, my disposable income was $1,000 and my consumption was over 100% of that at $1,500. And so I did dis-saving. And you can see as my income increases, I do spend more money every time, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, etc. But proportional to my income, my spending is actually decreased from over 100% to at 100% to then less than 100%, where we start having larger and larger values of saving. So the saving schedule you can also use, although it's not as usable, not as commonly used at least. And so here the flat curve is now my disposable income, and you can see the break even is now $2,000. Anything less than that, you're going to have that dis-saving as you see there, and anything greater than that, you will then actually have saving. Because it tells us the same information, we really don't use it very often though. So why would anybody shift their consumption schedule? Okay, why would the consumption curve shift upwards or downwards if your income doesn't change? Well, there's 4 reasons. One is called the wealth effect. So income is just your salary, your wages. Wealth includes assets, stocks, bonds, house, whatever else. And so if your wealth increases, if you feel wealthier, you don't feel like you need to save as much. You can rely on the asset to fall back on. You can sell the stocks if you're in a pinch, whatever else. And so because of that, you're more likely to spend closer to your full consumption or your full income on consumption. Whereas if those all of a sudden falter, if the stock market goes down, whatever else, you don't feel like you're as secure in that. And so you might start saving actual cash. And so you're going to start actually putting money into a savings account instead. The second non-income reason is expectations. Do you feel like you're heading for a bumpy financial future? Then you might put more money into a savings account versus, hey, it's blue sunny skies ahead, we're doing good. Then you might be a little bit more risky with your spending and go closer to that level. There's also a thing called real interest rate, and if these fall, then it's cheaper to borrow money, and you also don't gain as much from your savings account. We'll talk more about interest rates and how that works with banking, between the banks and the customers, the borrowers and the lenders. But if interest rates go down, it's cheaper to borrow the money, and so you're more likely to borrow, hence dis-saving. But if banks are providing lower interest rates, it's probably because they're also lending out or they're giving their people that they borrow money from, like savings accounts, lower interest rates also. And then finally is household debt, and this is just an individual thing. How much debt are you willing to have? And this kind of goes into expectations also. This is also the individual. What did that mean? Well, let's take a look at the graph we had earlier. So for example, let's say that there was an increase in wealth. Then that means even though your disposable income hasn't changed, you're still somewhere on this curve. I like to just pick a number. So let's say we have a disposable income of $2,000. If my wealth increases, then maybe I'm more willing to fall back on those assets in case I need it. So in fact, I'm more likely to spend money. In this case, I was breaking even. Now I'm overspending. I'm dis-saving at that $2,000 disposable income. But I'm okay with that. Because I have those assets to fall back on. I can sell them off and I'm still okay. So I would be an increase in consumption because of a non-income determinant. Well, if I'm feeling pessimistic about the future, if I start with that same $2,000, am I going to be more or less likely to be changing my spending habits? Well, in this case, I'm going to be less likely because I'm not so sure about the future, financial, whatever else, for whatever reason. And so I'd have a decrease in my consumption or desire to do so. How about the last one? You're more inclined to carry more debt. Pause for a second. Would that mean increased consumption or a decrease in consumption? That would be an increase in consumption. Since you're more likely to carry debt, you're more likely to be okay with more dis-saving. Now, this doesn't mean you didn't have that to begin with. It means you're more likely to carry debt, probably because you're feeling better about the future. And so it can kind of become a couple of these things. So we have this thing called average propensity to consume and average propensity to save, which is out of your income, what is the likelihood on average that you're going to consume or save? The percent of total income that's either consumed or saved. The equation is pretty simple. You take your total consumption and you divide by the total income. Whatever that number is your APC. APS is the total savings divided by the total income. These are dollar values, and then you'd be given some decimal. Now, because we're doing 1/2 of our income and then the other portion of our income, consumption, savings, when you add these two numbers together, you do equal 1. And so that's a number that's an equation we use, and it's nice to have in the background. So I would definitely write that down so you have that available because it pops up every now and again. And so as we see, my APC and APS don't stay consistent. At first, I had 1,500 consumption, so 1,500 divided by 1,000, 1.5. And then I had negative 500 over here, so 1.5 plus a negative 0.5 equals 1. And we can keep going with this. So 1.5 plus negative 5 equals 1. 1 plus 0 equals 1. And it keeps going. Okay, and so that really does work. And as you can see, my APC, as my income increases, my APC decreases from above 100%, 1.5, down to eventually 2/3. Another way of talking about this is MPC and MPS, which is marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. What are these things? The amount of consumption that changes with a change in income. MPC, change in consumption or change in income. Marginal propensity to save is the amount of savings that changes when you have a change in income. So it's, let's say you find $10. You know, somewhere on the street, you're just walking along over here, whatever else, you're just walking along and you find a $10 bill. What is the likeliness out of that change to the income? How much are you going to save? How much are you going to consume? What percent? Well, then that amount would be your MPC, and that amount would be your MPS. With this newfound income, increase or decrease, how much are you saving or consuming? And so one thing to note is these don't tend to change. At least that's what we're going to say, that they don't change. It's always 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 when you plug into these equations. So what equation are you plugging into? Well, it is change in consumption over change in disposable income. That would be MPC, and MPS is going to be change in saving over change in consumption. Luckily, MPC plus MPS also equals 1, which is a nice thing. MPC plus APS equals 1, and so do these, but the numbers are different. So how to get this first 0.5? Well, my consumption went from $1,500 to $2,000. That's a change of $500. My disposable income went from $1,000 to $2,000. There's a change of $1,000. 500 divided by 1,000 equals 0.5. And we keep going with this, but again, for us, because we're going to assume these don't change, once you have the first one, you can just fill the rest of the table in. So again, MPC plus MPS equals 1, and a good way to think about these are the slopes for the consumption schedule and the saving schedule. It's not exactly, see, it's a generic rise or run situation for change in consumption or change in disposable income or change in savings over change in disposable income. And again, they do not change. It's going to be helpful to know that. So again, this is a quick one, but the definitions about consumptions and savings and the schedule, the non-income determinants of fortune factors, APC, APS, and MPC and MPS. Now, out of all these, the MPC and MPS are definitely ones that we're going to be using quite a bit. Eventually, they're going to go towards what's called the GDP multiplier, which is going to be something that's going to carry with us for quite a while. So we do definitely want to know that and remember that because we'll be using it for quite a little bit. All right, until next time.